This is a short making of from my film Adventurados that I made in 2014 and was released 2015. With Adventurados, I wanted to capture two things. The first being small, independent, character-driven films that I liked from the 70s and 80s, and then also the look, feel, texture, the atmosphere of sci-fi movies from that same time. So there are films like Dark Star, John Carpenter's Dark Star, or into the 80s, Withnail and I, Bruce Robinson's film. And also around 1990, there was a film called, that no one's really heard of anymore, called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. Tim Roth and Gary Oldman were in that, and Tom Stoppard film. And it intrigued me because it was about two minor characters in a Shakespearean play, Hamlet, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And the story focused only on those two characters, the smallest, most insignificant characters of that film, of that whole story. And I thought that was a very unique and interesting way to look at a big sci-fi movie, is to focus on two very small, minor, insignificant characters and just stay with them while the whole universe, the whole world is imploding or things are happening. But we're stuck on a shuttle with these few characters and for the whole movie. The look of the film that I was very interested in capturing, trying to recapture basically these late 70s, 80s movies from Alien, Blade Runner, Escape from New York, Outland. All these films had a look and feel that I really enjoyed because it always felt to me like people were really in their environments. You could feel the texture of it. And that kind of has gotten lost, I think, over the last decades. Maybe Moon being one of the last films that kind of recaptured that feeling again, that you really felt your characters were in their environment, whether it was a set or location, doesn't matter. But they were there, using practical effects or props or whatever. You felt they were there. So I wanted to capture that. And that was the whole reason for making Adventurados for me. To get it going, I knew that one of the main characters of the film would be a shuttle. Since almost everything takes place on the shuttle for the whole film, I knew that had to be something interesting and special. And since I had interviewed Martin Bauer, famous model maker, great, amazing craftsman and designer, and he had done films that I liked, from the Nostromo, from Alien to the Outland Shuttle. He'd worked on those, and even on Space 1999, the TV show from the 70s. I've always loved the Eagles and numerous other spacecraft. So I contacted him, and he was up for building a shuttle. He helped. I basically gave him a little scribble of an idea I had, mixing all those three ships that I really liked, from Outland, Alien, Space 1999. And he designed and built this shuttle, which became, it was great because it had to be ugly. It had to be a working object that just does its job, never goes into an atmosphere, only flies either from the moon to a station or on the moon. So it didn't have to be aerodynamic. It just had to be a weightlifter, a cargo transporter. And he designed, built it, and roughly at about a 1/72nd scale-ish, worked out perfect. I had planned to actually make a larger sort of meter and a half version, or at least half of one, just detail one side for close-ups. But when I received Martin's model, I started doing camera tests on it, and it turned out that I could just use this model as it is. It just needed a little more detailing because the closer I got with the camera, I needed to add more panel lines and added a few more pieces here and there. But I could keep the model and didn't have to build another one, which was fantastic for me. So that was all that work was saved of doing another one. There's these crazy guys who are chasing the heroes in this little tug. And I had seen a model that Martin Bauer had made a number of years earlier for somebody, and I asked him if he could make something similar to that, which he did at about a 1/48 scale. And this little tug, he delivered that one. I had no idea about the color at the time. I didn't know should it have a color, so he kept it gray, and that's how he delivered it. Just before filming, I decided to add a wash of yellow over it, so it kind of a dirty yellow. And that was a last minute addition, and a few pieces, but not so much on the tug. That was mainly Martin's model as he delivered it. After the shuttles were done, I contacted Steve Howarth, who was another master model maker and designer, whom I interviewed for Sense of Scale, my documentary. And he was all up for building some more miniatures for my project, and I got him going on building some panels, the American flag panel there, which had some fun damage on it and looked like it's been in use for many years, because the shuttle really needed to look like it was out of date, used. Even it's in the future, it's already way out of date and past its prime. So that he started building that, and he also made another panel with a door, which was great because he used a door, like an airlock door from Moon, a casting, and added that to the panel that he made, a yellow, beautiful panel. And so that was fantastic. He got those, and I loved them so much. I got him to make there's a foot, the landing gear, when the shuttle lands. I wanted a close-up of when it crashes down, it hits hard. So he built that. And after the foot, he made some debris. There was some crashed shuttles and things all over the moon surface that I wanted. So Steve built a bunch of destroyed looking wreckage with twist, burned metal parts. And yeah, that was great. He made a probe that was like an antenna for the front of the ship, a large one, and I made one too. So those were always seen at the beginning of the film, these kind of antennas sticking out of the front of the ship. And Steve had worked for Bill Pearson, the late Bill Pearson, a great model maker and designer again, who I was really happy to interview also for my documentary. And luckily he had time and interest, and he built a miniature of an airlock interior, which went with Steve's panel. So I got this beautiful miniature airlock, also using a door from Moon, the film Moon. So kind of nice to have little references to films that I like. I've always tried to build in a lot of 80s references and even some 70s films references into a lot of these miniatures. So it felt like something that we've seen 30 or 40 years ago. It had to have that, I wanted that comfortable nostalgia feeling throughout the whole movie and all the designs. It's kind of something that could have been from 1984 or 5 or something. So Bill Pearson was very happy that he worked on the film and added one of his miniatures to that. Alex Friedrich, who I had worked with on Grand Budapest Hotel, he had some time, and I asked him to build a few miniatures. He built a couple of smaller versions, one smaller version of the Martin Bauer shuttle, and also a little tug that follows behind them. So I needed those for one shot where they're very distant, far away, moving and crashing usually. So he started with those. He built the nozzle there's an asteroid, and Alex built that nozzle in order to help control it in space for mining. So that was the idea behind that. Very technical looking piece. Oh yeah, Alex built a moon base that was seen at the beginning of the film when the camera was kind of just zooming in closer to the opening credits. And it's like this moon base just inside of a crater. So I needed a small, very highly detailed model, and Alex did that. And then Alice, another model maker who I worked with on Grand Budapest Hotel, she made a fairly large version of an asteroid, which the nozzle was used for. And she carved it out of foam, and I ended up painting it, just kind of a dirty gray. But yeah, she made that, carved it with all the little, like a potato, basically, a large potato with lots of little craters all over it. Nico Nitsch, who I worked with also on Grand Budapest Hotel, and I hired Nico to make a bunch of just hand props, whether they were little buttons that would blink on and off for the actors to react to on the set. But also, one of the main things in the film was this tablet that they're always carrying around that looks like it's ancient and very out of date, but strong. And so I had him design and build that, and I stuck an iPad inside of it. But that was one of the main things that Nico made that gets used a lot by the actors. There's another shuttle that passes by the hero shuttle towards the beginning of the film. And that shuttle was one that was made by Holger Delfs. He made that originally for Die Sturzflieger, which was a German film from 1995, and then he reworked it because it was seen just briefly for a split second in the background of a shot. So he took it, did some reworking of it to be used for something, and then I ended up using it as the other shuttle in the film. Beautifully detailed, sort of a Chris Foss design, and I love that. So, and I was very happy to be able to have that model already completed and detailed and ready to go. I could just put it right in front of the camera and shoot it. It's done. So, another designer, model maker, filmmaker that I had interviewed in America for Sense of Scale, my documentary, was Fon Davis. And he had a crew of people and his own company, Fonco, who built numerous models for the film as well. It started off with this puppet, third scale astronaut puppet. I didn't have enough money in the budget to rent an astronaut costume for my actors. So I figured, well, if it's big enough, roughly third scale, it's fairly large, then I'll do all those scenes where the actor is outside of this, on the hull of the ship, do it with this puppet. So they built it for me, fantastic, lots of detail, and even a Harrison Ford puppet inside is a kind of an in-joke. And that ended up being used for all the scenes where you see him outside. I built some larger third scale size hull sections of the model of the miniature shuttle for this puppet. And that saved a lot of time, energy, and money of not having to find a studio, build partial sets of this, in one-to-one scale. And it's much easier to do it smaller. So that worked out fantastic. After that was done, I needed a few robots. And one is this robot that's seen in a commercial sort of in the film where I always wanted like a former military robot that was used for hunting, killing, doing whatever. And it's been reduced to like a garbage collecting or planting trees in this nuclear fields that are wastelands. And he's just seemed very sad and depressed that he wasn't able to do what he was built to do originally, but was demoted basically to just cleaning up the earth. And that was the idea behind that. And so that was built by Fonco. And yeah, it looked great in the film. Another one was this sort of spider-like thing, also obviously based on Aliens and the power loader to give that reference of nostalgia again. And I just wanted this thing sitting like a spider in the storage bay of the shuttle, where it's always just kind of sitting there. Maybe it doesn't even work anymore or whatever. It's just this creepy thing in the background. And just gives that atmosphere and texture that I was after. Also, one of the main props that was also another character actually in the film was the little clean bot. It's roughly this size, sort of like the K9 in Doctor Who from the 70s, and just this cleaning bot that goes around not really doing much of anything. It's more of a mascot to the lead actors and their characters, and was a beautiful prop built by Fon Davis and all of his model makers. Greg Jein is a master model maker and one of my heroes going back decades. And I interviewed him for Sense of Scale, but I was also able to convince him, or he offered to build a miniature for Adventurados. It was a large satellite dish. I was very happy that he could take part in this and build something for the film. To have his work in my film was an honor. So he built that. I transferred it from America already to Germany to film it. And he used the main dish part. The large dish was from Batteries Not Included, a 1987 film. And there's one of the alien sort of robots there, and he just used half of that, and along with numerous other parts from his work on Stargate and other films. And he just cobbled this thing together, and I used it for a couple close-ups. So that was a great experience to be able to have his work in my film. After I was done filming with the actors and the live action, I started building a lot of miniatures as well in the post-production time. And one of the first things was I needed to make a cockpit. Steve Howarth had made these two chairs for the cockpit, third scale, and so I built the set basically around that and the window, and for all shots looking out the window. And it was impossible for me to make in one-to-one scale on set for the actors, just ran out of budget. So all those shots looking out the front were miniature, and then all the shots looking at the actors, we used the set that we had and built partial chairs, just the top part, so it matched later on. I also built a number of other models, like just big, larger sections of the shuttle. For instance, the escape pod. That was probably the first model I think I made for the film. So I went to a store and got some Tupperware, a bowl and a plate, glued them together, added all the pieces to make it look functional. And yeah, that was the escape pod. And there are sections of it when it leaves, which I built, like a large section. Here, Martin Bauer built a small one for the top of the small shuttle. And just when you see it leaving, I needed sections, or also when the astronaut is out there, Steve Hanna's character, Frug, he needed to be sitting on something or walking along something, and so I built large sections of the shuttle exterior, about probably third scale. There was also a moon base that was built to scale for this shuttle, and I built that out of cobbling any kind of pieces I could find. It was just kind of anything goes, leftover pieces, fairly large, tabletop type model, and that's when you see a POV of them landing, just part of the base in the landing pad. Wanted to just capture a feeling of almost like 2001 Space Odyssey. You're just kind of moving in on this thing as they land. Very small scale. It's probably HO scale, I think, in the end, because you didn't really need to see it close. It was just as they're moving down towards it. There was also a container, which was very important to the film since they're carrying this important cargo from the moon to Earth, and nobody knows what's in it, and no one ever really finds out what's in it. But it's just this large container which I built, a white container, and I only detailed it from one side in the front because that's all you ever see. And it was sitting inside of the storage bay inside the shuttle, so I built the interior of that where it's just sitting there the whole time. It was a fun model to make. It's obviously something very important, and it had to look that way. I also built a little bit of debris for the moon surface when they're landing and they see a shuttle had crashed before them. So you see bits and pieces of stuff on the moon, and along with Steve Howarth's debris and crashed stuff everywhere. The film really relied a lot on practical effects, which was very important to me. That there's no CGI in the film. Everything is built in the whole film. All of the sets, there's no green screen, no blue screen. I just wanted to capture that look of these people are really in their environment, almost like Das Boot, which was an extremely inspirational film to me when I saw it back in 81 or 82. Where you just felt like you were there inside this tin can with the actors. It felt real. It felt like you would have to be very crowded in and claustrophobic. So we filmed with a lot of smoke, and yeah, but everything was real. They could walk around, touch a lot of buttons. There's things to do, and yeah, all the miniature effects added, I think, to the reality, at least the reality, the sci-fi film reality that I prefer, which has now gotten lost in the CGI, where even though you may have known it was a model that was being filmed, at the very least it was something real. And I prefer that look in my films.